Daniel Kostick presents Premiership Elections in Albertan History. This election took place on March 21st, 1940, and was the ninth election in the province's history. It would come after the official end of the Great Depression and in the early years of World War II. Despite being handed a supermajority in 1935, Premier William Aberhart's first term in office was anything but smooth sailing. Aberhart was serving concurrently as Minister of Education and Attorney General, the latter of which allowed him to reintroduce restrictions on the sale of alcohol. The rest of his party's promises failed to meet any kind of success, since the Great Depression and previous government's policies had left the government with very little money. Social credit was unable to implement currency changes due to provisions in the British North America Act, and the province was also unable to take direct control over banks in the province. This had the effect of established banks fleeing the province, causing even more economic hardship. Aberhart's government later set up the Alberta Treasury branches in 1938, a provincially owned bank that still exists to this day and is the only government-owned and operated bank in all of Canada. Aberhart's government was the first in Alberta history to implement recall legislation. This legislation would allow constituents to demand that their MLA step down and force a by-election if they received enough support from other voters in that riding. This would end up backfiring, as Aberhart's own constituents would gather signatures against him. The government would repeal the legislation before Aberhart was forced to resign as MLA. This makes William Aberhart the first politician in all of Canada to be threatened with a recall. With the lack of progress made on campaign promises, Aberhart was also faced with a backbencher revolt in 1937. In particular, the failure to bring about the $25 a month dividends in that year's budget resulted in many backbenchers openly revolting against Aberhart, threatening to invoke a confidence vote. The backbenchers held the government hostage for 4 months until in June of 1937 a compromise was made. The government gave significant power to a committee of backbenchers, who in turn invited L.D. Byrne and George Powell, two Douglas loyalists from the United Kingdom, to ensure that social credit ideals were being passed. Powell created a loyalty pledge to the Social Credit Board, and all but 6 MLAs signed it, ending the crisis. By this time, Aberhart had fired half of his pre-crisis cabinet. Struggles with the federal government were the norm during this term. This was due to the fact that most of the policies that formed the basis of social credit ideology were deemed unconstitutional, since the federal government was the only entity that could determine monetary policy. John Bowen, Alberta Lieutenant Governor at the time, refused to grant royal assent to multiple bills, including forcing banks to come under provincial control and a bill forcing newspapers to write official government rebuttals to stories deemed inaccurate. These would be deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, setting a precedent for social credit policies to be declared dead on arrival. One thing not deemed unconstitutional was the policy of prosperity certificates, which were introduced in a limited form to be redeemed after a set amount of time and proved to be incredibly unpopular. Trouble would continue to follow the government, as in 1937, David Dugan, the MLA for Edmonton, would reveal that a letter had been distributed at the legislature building calling for his extermination. This letter opened with, "My child, you should never say hard or unkind things about bankers' toadies. God made snakes, slugs, snails, and other creepy crawly, treacherous, and poisonous things. Never, therefore, abuse them. Just exterminate them. And to prevent all evasion, demand the result you want. $25 a month and a lower cost to live." Dugan was one of 9 men identified as a toady, which included John Limburn, former Attorney General and MLA for Edmonton, and William Griesbach, Senator and former MP for Edmonton West. Police raided the Edmonton Office of Social Credit and found over 4,000 copies of the pamphlet. Griesbach pressed charges, and the resulting trial would see Joseph Unwin, whip and MLA for Edson, sentenced to 3 months hard labor, and the aforementioned Powell sentenced to 6 months hard labor and deportation once he had served his sentence. In the wake of the Douglasite reign of terror, opposition parties attempted to unite to form a single entity to oppose social credit. This movement was made up of both the Conservative and Liberal parties, as well as the moderate wing of the former United Farmers government. This group ran independent candidates in all ridings that were mutually agreed upon by all 3 groups. This grouping was supported by figures such as Edward Grey, Liberal Party leader and MLA for Edmonton, David Dugan, Conservative Party leader and MLA for Edmonton, Lewis O'Brien, a former captain in the Army Medical Corps, and was led by Andrew Davidson, the mayor of Calgary. In an expression of solidarity with the movement, the Conservative Party closed down official operations and ceased to exist. Unlike the Conservatives, Grey still decided to keep the Liberal Party active. He only supported candidates that the Liberals had a hand in nominating. This resulted in the party still running candidates under its own banner. With the massive exodus of support from the party in 1935, Labour had been struggling to maintain a presence even at the local level. Fred White, the former leader of the party, was still serving as alderman at the time, but this would not last much longer. The party brass decided to throw its main support behind the growing Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, but it still ran candidates under its own banner. 1940 would be the first time that the CCF would run candidates in a provincial election. The party chose Chester Ronning, former UFA MLA for Camrose, as leader. Ronning had been an outspoken supporter of the CCF since being elected in 1932. The CCF would see a large increase of support from the hardline wing of the UFA after it retired from politics in 1936. And here are the results. William Aberhart won, securing 36 out of a possible 57 seats, while securing 42.9% of the popular vote, down 20 seats and 11.3% from 1935. Next came Andrew Davidson, whose independent movement won 19 seats and 42% of the popular vote. When compared to the combined Conservative and Liberal results from 1935, saw an increase of 12 seats and 13%. Labour came next, winning 1 seat and 1.1% of the popular vote, up 1 seat and down 0.6% since 1935. Next came Edward Grey, whose Liberals won 1 seat and 0.9% of the popular vote, down 4 seats and 22.2% since 1935. Finally came Chester Ronning, whose CCF won 0 seats and 11.11% of the popular vote. In spite of the scandals, infighting, and lack of promise fulfillment, Social Credit managed to hold on to power, albeit with a reduced majority. The independent movement saw a large increase in votes from the combined results of the previous election, and it would come within 1,400 total votes of winning the popular vote. This did not translate to seats, especially outside the major cities. Since the vote was too widely dispersed, this resulted in Social Credit winning a number of races by extremely thin margins. Andrew Davidson would go on to lead the official opposition as an independent MLA. With the rise of CCF, Labour continued to see its support dwindle, and 1940 would be the final election in which an MLA was elected under its banner. I'll see you in the next one.